Thank you for listening to Breakthrough Consciousness,
the podcast where we get out of the loop and into it all.
My name is Sean.
And I'm Clayton.
And as your co-host, we're going to be facilitating hearty conversation centered around personal growth.
Whether that be through us sharing our own stories and experiences, or holding space for our guests to share theirs, we're going to tie it all together with lively conversation and hope that you all enjoy. Today we've got a very special episode, bringing on an old friend, Michael Pate, that I knew from about 7th, 8th grade into high school. We played football together.
Okay.
We went to different Catholic schools in like the same league, so all the kids would get together and play on one team because all the schools were so small, you know?
Oh, gotcha.
And it's a whole different person then, and so is he, for sure. Like, it was really cool getting him on the cast and
reconnecting.
Really
his energy, for sure. Mm-hmm. Cool guy.
Seeing where he comes from and what helps him along his path and journey.
Mm-hmm. So Michael was actually the first guy that's reached out to us about coming onto the podcast, so I thought that was super cool. Even though that you guys hadn't seen each other for however many years, maybe going on a decade or something.
Yeah,
you're not that old, but you know, however many years.
It's like 6 or 7.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't even seen you in that long, but just saw that we had a podcast through social media of some sort. And
through his own will, chose to tune in and listen and join us, and has listened to every single episode. And
yeah, I guess he was just vibing with it and thought he had some perspective to share, so that's exactly what he does. Came on and talked about how he came into the Christian faith and, actually came like out of Catholicism into...
As he described it, like an agnostic kind of point of view.
Yeah. So, not to tell his story for him, but that's the gist of pretty much the topic material. So, you know, you and I aren't really sharing necessarily the same perspective, so it's kind of interesting to do a little bit of some compare and contrast our own belief systems.
Because he was able to share so much of what helped him, what brought him to where he is now with his belief system and walking with his faith, and us sharing essentially that same information and then finding the like reflections between all of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you're a Christian, like, this probably isn't going to be too much new information for you, but you know, some of our perspectives might give a little different flavor, a little different viewpoint. So, and if you know, let's be real, it's 2019. There's a lot of flack that goes towards Christianity right now. So if you're in that camp of people, you know, definitely give this a listen though. There's some really good quality, good vibing material in it. We definitely reach a place of some lightheartedness,
exactly,
and like centeredness, and share some good moments. So
it's eye and heart opening to what actual like execution of an organized religion can do for your own mind, body, and spirit. And if that might be the path for you, then so be it. Walk your path. Figure out what works for you. And for me, this was just eye opening in the sense that I personally was able to let go of some judgments that I held towards, not Christianity specifically, but just religions in general, and open me up to how that can be helpful for those that want that or need that community as a part of their path. So
not just the community, but the structure. And that's something we get into deeper, so I won't harp too much on it right now. But yeah, definitely dive in, enjoy, don't think too hard. I mean, no one's trying to convince anyone of anything in this podcast. Definitely not this episode, definitely not the podcast in general. So just sharing perspectives, and that's what we do.
Exactly. It helps widen our perspectives, and hopefully it can widen yours regardless of which perspective you're coming from. Enjoy.
That seasonal depression, like, I didn't realize that was a thing.
Real thing.
Until like this past year. I was like, wow. Like, you never really know what's happening until like you go through that. And I was like, man, this sucks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even just like,
this is terrible.
Whatever it is, usually it takes like getting through it, looking back to even like realize what was going on.
Yeah.
You know,
and I was
hindsight.
like, this is terrible. Like, and I realize now I was insensitive at the time, but you see all these social media posts of like people depressed, and you kind of just brush it off. Like, I never had to go through that, so like I don't
must not
understand.
be valid.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that? But
you
then
experience the same affliction as someone else, you're going to be like, oh, I see now.
right. But it's just like, there's just not as much to do. Like, you can't go outside. Like, what do you...
Less vitamin D, less exercise typically.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's the vitamin D, man. Even like during the summer and stuff, just like being indoors, like not getting that direct sunlight. It's a crazy thing. Like so many just random ailments that like, wow, if we spent more time in the sun, literally clear that up. You know?
Well, and it's like, what do you do? Like, what do you do for fun in the winter? Like, maybe go to a bar.
Right.
And like,
Maybe.
that's amplifying the problem that you probably have.
Half the time, not in
point.
that moment, but next morning, next day, next week.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's like summer, you can go to the park. You can even go outside. Like maybe have a drink, but like you can sit outside. You don't have to be cooped up.
I love winter sports though. Skiing.
Yeah, I was gonna say
tubing,
skiing is fun to do. I played basketball.
Indoor.
Yeah,
Nice.
indoor basketball.
Nice.
Just trying to find something to do.
And there's always like indoor soccer leagues, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah. I was also in a weird spot because I had just graduated, and being a teacher, like there are no teaching jobs in January because it's halfway through the year.
Right.
So I was just in a weird spot of like not having any purpose almost.
Yeah.
And you just like you just feel that, and it's like
totally.
I don't know. It was just a weird. Everything kind of just hit at once. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, that limbo stage of like you're waiting, like you did the thing, you know,
Yeah.
you completed the task, you got your degree, but now it's like, all right, well, what am I gonna do for the next like rest of the spring and then also summer? I mean, I guess summer would be the time to apply and stuff,
Right.
but yeah, I totally.
And I
get that.
work at a camp in the summer too,
Okay.
so that was fun.
Nice.
I was like the third year I'd done that.
Mhm.
which camp?
It's a camp in Fairfield, the Community Arts Center.
Okay.
I don't know if you probably
I've been in the community arts center. I
Yeah.
took some like woodworking classes and stuff there. And
There's a camp there, and it's the best job in the world.
Nice.
It's
That's cool.
We go to like Reds games. We go to like our most boring days, and when we just go to Joyce Park. Like those are our park days.
Boring,
Those
but
are like our
that's still
boring days, but
lovely.
it's still fun. Yeah, it's still fun to go to a park.
What's
you know?
the age range that you work with?
11 through 15.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
and I really love the people I work with too. So
Old enough to take care of themselves, young enough to still be fun to teach.
right. Well, yeah, and like I'm teaching 6th grade, so that's like 11, 12, 10, 11, 12 is that age. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is. 6th grade is I don't know.
Transitional
that
stage.
seems like
It is
tough.
a weird age. You know,
Yeah.
their bodies are starting to change.
That's what I was gonna get at. Yeah.
And like, but like they still like I have a carpet and I can still read them picture books, and
really.
like I put videos online that are probably a little too young for them. But like when we just have some downtime, I'll play something, and like they still like they can still handle it. Like
Right.
they're not like too old or too
They're not
cool.
like, "Psh, what is this?
Yeah, and sometimes they are, but like okay, just get over it. I'm not gonna change it. So
My
Right.
dad lets me watch Family Guy.
right, can't play that. But
I know, right?
these kids are getting old enough that they're aware, like the problems that their parents are dealing with.
Yeah.
And, like in the district I'm in, like that's a relevant thing that like, and they know that, like they know that is a problem going on, and like
Poverty and such.
like poverty and opioid addiction.
Yeah.
And it's like they're living with 7 step siblings, or they're living with their grandma, or they're living with mom's boyfriend. Like it. And some kids are able to rise above it, but I don't know. I still think there's something to, if both parents are home, and not saying that that's what every household is supposed to look like or like needs to look like, but when there's stability, I should just say stability.
Stability,
If there's
for sure,
stability
for
in
sure.
their home life,
Yeah.
then I do think that makes a huge
No,
difference.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And
that's
that's
how
what-
people can like thrive, is like from that solid foundation, you know?
Mhm.
We're all ungrounded and spacey and like have no idea what we're supposed to be doing, you know, because there's no like role models or examples of what we're supposed to be doing in a healthy way.
And
You know? And then you just gravitate to, whatever pleasure society leads you to gravitating to,
And
to distract yourself.
One of my
you know?
biggest challenges, I went to Catholic school too. And
Yeah.
my parents were paying for me to go to Catholic school. So
Right.
first of all, I'm already on third base. If my parents are like, and that has nothing to do with me, but my parents had the means to send me to this school, which means that they have the disposable income to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're spending these thousands of dollars for me to go to the school, they care about what I'm doing in school.
Right.
So
right.
I can't just say I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
But these kids' parents, they've got other problems to worry about. They don't care what their kids.
Yeah.
It's just some place for them to be for a little bit.
Right.
And
So,
if their parents don't care, then how do I get them to care? That's
Exactly.
that's like a huge
exactly.
like roadblock, I think, as an
Yeah.
educator, especially like
See
in
that.
public school. And some kids have a lot bigger things to worry about than school. And
True.
But I also have, people breathing down my neck. Well, I need this. You need to hit these standards, whatever
Exactly.
kind of thing. And it's but just knowing where they're coming from and knowing that things aren't ever going to be perfect. Like nothing will go right. Like I shouldn't say that. A lot of things do not go right in any given school day. And just being comfortable, being uncomfortable,
Yeah.
basically, is
Yeah.
something that I'm like learning to try to do. Because I thought I was the farthest away from a perfectionist, but like knowing, like I've like learned that about myself. It's like I don't like when things are not going right or how I expected them to go,
Right.
type of thing. And then when you have to like do an audible or something like that, and these kids are missing 2 to 3 days of school at a time and trying to catch them up, and there's a lot of things you got to worry about. But,
Right.
Going with the flow.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: how do you feel like you reconcile that within yourself? Just like knowing that your kids are struggling at home and that they have no like motivation, at least that you can see at this point in their lives.
Yeah, and this isn't every kid by any means,
for
but
sure,
you
for
see,
sure,
yeah.
and that's true of any school. There's always the kids that are struggling more so than others, and
Well, and this is what I was talking with Clayton earlier. That my transition of becoming a Christian within the past year and a half is that is how I reconcile it, because I do have I do have a reason why this world is so broken. It's like, we are a fallen world, and just knowing that, our creator knows that this isn't right, but he's going to come back and make it right one day, knowing that this is not how it's supposed to be, but one day it will be like that. And I was talking to my friend at my church who's also a social worker. And, she was just asked, because there's a lot of connotations of being a Christian today, which are fair. Like, whether it be, the stances on homosexuality or LGBTQ in general. She got asked, she went to Miami, so a pretty liberal college. She got asked, how can you be a Christian and be a social worker? And I'm just thinking to myself, how can you not be?
Yeah.
Like, how can't you be a Christian? Like, how do you get through that? Like, in my line of work, I'm not sure how I would bear that burden, because that's the entire point of Christianity, is you are putting that burden on someone else that came down on the earth to die for those burdens. You know what I mean? Like, it isn't my job to be the perfect teacher. Like, I'm not going to be the perfect teacher. And that's not where my identity is. Like, my identity is a child of God, So that's how I get through it. Not that my flesh doesn't still allow me to try, that doesn't force me to try to still be that perfect person. Like, I need to do all this right so that all these kids are gonna be saved or whatever. Because it's, I want to help them. I want them to learn in my classroom, but I can't be expected to save all these kids. Like, it's too much of a burden to bear.
I mean, I feel like none of us can really ever save another person.
Right.
All we have jurisdiction over is ourselves, right?
Exactly. Just being the example that we want to see and trying to reflect that onto everybody.
Right.
And I did want to say, like, I think it's beautiful that you are able to at least have this awareness of your students, see that they're struggling, not just see them as these beings in your class to learn. This is why you're here. Get your shit together. Like, come on, pick up your pencil, listen. Like, I don't care what's going on at home. You actually have, like, the compassion in your heart to be like, hey, I see that you're struggling. Like, your family might be struggling, but it sounds like you're still there and fully willing to work with them, not just like as a class, but individually, to help them pick up on this knowledge. And I could see how your faith really has a large impact, having such a like beautiful idea of what that is, and being able to like bring that into yourself and share that through your own reflection to those children. That's beautiful.
And I try,
sure.
I should say, I try to be like that, and I want to be like that, but it doesn't always come out either. And I'm not perfect, and there are times where I am fully aware of this, and I'm still, I still snap at a kid. I still have those moments where like, well, why don't you just get this type of thing, or like,
Right.
Can you just do this? Like, can you just, but. And
Frustration.
that's the point. But that's also the thing with Christianity, is that I know I'm going to fail. And like, that's where grace comes in. Like, if I was perfect, then, Christ died in vain. Like, he came down, so because I was going to sin, like, he knew I was going to sin. And yeah, I would say, like, yeah, my faith is definitely my anchor, I would say. I think that's a good way of, like, knowing that that's where my identity is first. And, like, once you are comfortable with that, like, really all aspects of your life start changing rapidly. I used to be a person that really cared what other people thought of me. And so I would kind of manipulate myself or manipulate my personality to try to fit those that surrounded me, because I wanted that love, and I wanted that,
external validation,
affection. But once you actually receive the love of, like, knowing that you're not worthy to enter this kingdom, this perfect kingdom, and your Creator came down as a human, as you are. Like, imagine this great king, like, this Egyptian pharaoh, like, becoming a slave so that you could sit next to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it is. Like, it's, he's our king, and he came down for our sake so that we could one day be made right in his eyes again. You know what I mean? And once you have that, like, foundation, like I said, all aspects of your life start to change, and I'm the fruit of that, and I'm a much better person because of it. And I feel like because I've received that love, I'm able to love better. I'm able to love my neighbor better. I'm able to love my students better. I'm able to love my family better.
Right. I feel like you can orient yourself into your own reality with more clarity, because you feel like you understand the puzzle a little bit better. And I feel like I would use different language to describe essentially the same thing. I mean, I definitely would agree that, like, faith is what anchors me. Like, absolutely. And my faith has been, like, really materialized in my life through, frankly, psychedelic experiences with mushrooms in particular. It was, like, just really, like, an experiential affirmation of what I'd been leading up to my whole life up until that point. So it wasn't like it magically, like, gave me something that wasn't there. It just sort of released the film and fog and confusion that, like, wasn't allowing me to see it as clearly.
Right. We all have these realizations, revelations, so to say, where we're able to experience a particular truth through one channel of it all, whether that is through finding God within Christ and taking that love and faith and spark of divinity and embodying who he was, that love, and being able to share that, or a psychedelic experience that gives you that same light of Christ, I would say, that same connection with self, with the divine, that shows you the love that you are, so that you can then reflect and share it outward for certain. It's really beautiful seeing the correlation between what you both hold in your hearts, but seeing that it's literally the same love, the same light, the same compassion that you have for other humans, other beings. And
Right.
did want to say, like, you're talking about making mistakes and how you're not going to be the perfect person, but no, none of us are. I mean, that's the beastly part of who we are, the physical animal humanity of being a third dimensional physical being. We got light, we got dark, we got everything in between, but we still have centers. We still have love, kindness, compassion that we can integrate regardless of which, facet of the whole that we're taking it from. It's like looking at this big, immaculate carved diamond that all this light's shining out of. Every single face has a different story to tell, but regardless,
each of us are standing at a different point of view, so we're seeing
it from a different facet. But at the end of it all, we're still looking at that same light, that same love, that same centered peace. And maybe not all of us, but I'd like to feel and think that everyone is doing their best to take that little glimpse of light that we all see in those strange places and see the beauty, see the love,
absolutely.
Feel it, and
embody it.
Actually be able to share that. And
embody it and connect to it. And I would like us to get into the nitty gritty of, like, how we each see that facet. But before we get into that, just want to ask you a little bit more, just if you want to give some specifics of your story, like what led you up to that clarity with your faith, and just however you want to.
Yeah, well, I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
So I was familiar with the name Jesus and God and all those things. But I feel like I had a very warped view of what Christianity was. And this could have just been me being immature, not paying attention during my religion classes. I don't remember much about my religion classes.
Yeah.
I could have been being taught good things, but whether it just went one ear out the other. And I wouldn't consider myself a Catholic anymore, but we can get to that later. But I did believe in God, but I realize now, looking back, that I wasn't what I would call saved. I believed in God, but I had a very warped view, like I said. And once I got to college and I saw all these different people for the first time in my life, growing up Catholic, 97% of the kids looked exactly like me, had the same kind of family background as me, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Once I started meeting different kind of people that had different kind of beliefs, I thought a lot of those kind of thoughts were attractive, like this idea of like existentialism, like, oh, so like we were just here and we created the meaning, like that kind of thing. Or like even Taoism, like, we need the darkness. We need like this darkness in order to appreciate the light. And a lot of those philosophies I think were attractive, and like a lot of them I think have a little bit of many truths in them, but I wouldn't call them the truth, obviously, where I am right now in my life. And I realize now, like, so I kind of just started doing things on my own. I kind of was all over the place. I didn't really have anything to believe in. So looking back on it, a lot of my college years, I realized that I probably was a little bit depressed, and I was definitely not the best version of myself, whether it be how I treated other people or how I treated myself, things I was putting in my body.
Probably first and foremost, how you were treating yourself. And then
right. Yeah. And
making out
through
from
that, and through that affecting how I treated other people. Yeah. And just not respecting people, like how, and like I wasn't the worst person in the world. Like there are obviously
I could never see you being that.
Right. There are people doing pretty bad things, but like I'll just say it this way. I was definitely not the best version of myself that I could have been. Mm-hmm. And and this is like where I think God comes in. Is like I was going into the Miami Rec Center, and they were handing out these flyers. It's Miami Navigators. It's a on-campus ministry type thing for a community with other Christians, and it said I was just taking a survey. I had a chance to win a free Chipotle burrito, so I was like, okay, I'll have a chance to win a free Chipotle burrito.
You guys, I'm in.
To ask questions like, are you interested in like on-campus community, and like, are you interested in a Bible study? And I was like, sure, I'll see. At this point, I was agnostic. I acknowledged that there could be a God, could not be, kind of thing.
I'm open. Show me a sign.
Yeah, and that was mine. And I signed. I was like, yeah, check the box. Like, so I get this text from, his name's Sheldon Thomas, one of my best friends in the world now. He was like, hey man, I saw that you were interested in this Bible study. Like, this is my address. Yada yada yada. And so that's where I went. I went to his house, and I came clean. I was like, yeah, man, I'm agnostic. There was a few other Christians there that were obviously signed up for that Bible study. I was like, yeah, I'm agnostic. I am here. I don't want to come like as somebody that is like trying to like fire you up or anything, but like I'm coming at a place of ignorance, which was a half truth. Like there was a huge part of me that thought I was going to be coming into this Bible study and like asking all these questions, like, well, how can there be evil in the world? Like, what God would allow evil in the world, or like, did God create evil, kind of thing? Questions that I thought were really smart and like would stump them. Questions that he'd heard a million times. Right. Questions that he just asked himself a million times. But that's where I think God really moved me in my life, because I wasn't a guy that like worked out a lot. It was January, so it was like the new year. You tell yourself, I'm going to finally work out this year, so that's why I was going to the rec center. Mm-hmm. And he really was the perfect kind of person to introduce me to who Jesus was. And like he was the first person that I really like actually had genuine conversations with, where I felt safe. And first of all, he was my friend. Like he was my friend first, and he welcomed me with open arms, and he was a good friend, and he was loving. And I went down to Memphis, Tennessee for like kind of a mission trip 3 months later. Things that I wouldn't have done with my anxiety of like meeting new people, but like that's what I call the Holy Spirit inside me that like just kind of I feel like was guiding me.
When it feels right.
Yeah, it feels right. And So that's where I was. That's where I felt like I was in a church for the first time down there. And that's where I felt like, I remember asking myself, like, if you're real, like, tell me, like, give me something. You know, I know at the time it was the Holy Spirit, like, inside of me, like, it's kind of and you can call that adrenaline if you want. I think that could be the same thing.
Adrenaline comes from your gut.
It was like, I think that could be a spiritual thing. So then it kind of went away. It's like, you know, I was still going to Bible study. Like, I just like being around these people, first of all. You know, they were really nice people. And I started to put two and two together, like, what's the common denominator here? Because I work with Christians in the summer too, and they're really nice. Like, what's going on here? And it wasn't until I went skydiving that
Talk about a breakthrough.
I was up in a plane, this dinky plane that had like duct tape on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm gonna die. Like, I could actually die right now.
Yeah.
And up in that plane, that ascending, I just gave myself up. I was like, Jesus, I acknowledge you as my savior. I know you came down to save me. Please hold me during this. And that's when I believed I was saved. And I jumped out of the plane, and I was like, I obviously made it. But that's when I considered myself saved. But one thing that I didn't start doing was actually trying to walk with Christ. I was not changing my life in any way. I was still doing the same things I was doing. So
It was just an idea still at that point.
yeah, it was. And I do believe, like, if something would have happened, if I would have died, like, I do believe in, like, the theology of Christianity, I would have been saved. But I was not really anywhere closer to Jesus than I was. And it wasn't until like those next few months where I realized that, like, oh man, I cannot do this on my own. Like, a few different things happened. There was an opportunity that I thought, there was a job opportunity that I thought that was just like I was like destined for. I was like, yeah, this is perfect for me. I ended up putting that in front of God's plan for me.
I've had similar situations, for sure.
And or like whether it be women, and it's like, you know, putting these women in front of, like, and they're not perfect either. And I just realized that, like, I'm putting all these things in front of something, all these earthly things that are not perfect,
in front of your spirit,
in front of my spirit, in front of my Creator, and like it bit me in the ass. And it was the bite in the ass that I needed. And we were talking about earlier, that was like that seasonal depression that hit, and I was like, all right, I need to make a change in my life. And that's actually when I started going to church and started, you know, making an effort to meet more Christians and be in community with them, and like working through these things together, kind of thing.
Not just postulating, but practicing.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Like, actually, and not just on Sundays for an hour either. Like, actually trying to live a Christ-like life throughout, like 24/7. Like, what can you do?
And Christ is such a wonderful example of a person to integrate and adopt, like, his thoughts, feelings, ideas, compassions, unconditional love. Like,
Right.
That's powerful right there. That is a loving example, and such a beautiful, in my perspective, a guide to have in this life would be Christ.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm like, I've been at my church for 10 months now, and I can look back and it's really cool to see, like, how far I have come. And, like, still looking back, like, I've been a Christian for a year and a half, and I still have some of the same questions that I'm asking my pastor every single week. Like, well, what does this mean? And it's so upside down, because it's so hard for you to feel like there is nothing I can do to earn this, like, this grace. Like, my whole life I was thinking, I have to be this good in order to get to heaven.
I gotta give 10%, and I gotta give this to the community.
The tithing,
I gotta do that. It's way too black and white there.
Yeah, or it's like, I literally thought of it like a scale. Like, okay, these are the good things I did, these are the bad things I did, which one's higher? Or like, which one's lower? That's if you're getting in or not. Like, as a Catholic, and like I said, I don't think I was necessarily taught this. Catholics do have this idea of works and faith save you. But I don't know if I was exactly taught that. But that's what I thought it was. Like, as I was like, if I do such and such, if I do good enough, I guess. But there's this idea that in actual Christianity, it's like, there is nothing you can do. Like, we're all, like, Gandhi isn't worthy of the kingdom because Gandhi sinned too. And that might be the highest, outside of Christ himself, highest moral figure we've ever had. and he sinned. Like, he didn't do things right. Martin Luther King, one of the probably the best U.S. citizen we ever had, he was unfaithful. But that's the entire point, is that there's nothing we can do. We're all equal at the bottom of that cross. And like, that's why he came, to wipe the slate clean for everybody. Everybody's welcome.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Backtracking to what you're saying about you feel like you're your best self now. Do you feel like I
feel like I'm a better version of myself. Better version.
Yeah.
Working
Definitely.
so it's a continuous process.
Yeah,
in
I'll
your
never
mind.
be a finished product. I won't be a
Indeed.
finished. I won't be made right until Christ comes back.
Beautiful. I wanted to hear that clarification just for myself
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah.
And secondly, like people outside of the Christian faith, like that are wholeheartedly rooted in whether it's their religion, spiritual practice, and mental indoctrination, whatever it might be. Like, do you feel like if they don't have Christ in their life, that they aren't saved people, they're not going to make it to this kingdom that you speak of?
So, I am not God. So, I don't know. What I do know is that God is all good, God is just, and God is all powerful. I do believe in all 3 of those things. I know that he's the fairest judge of all. It's really hard for me to think that there are people. I grew up Catholic, so I heard Jesus' name. There are people growing up in India who might not ever hear Jesus' name. There are certain Bible verses, and I wish I had them memorized, that do address this. There is this idea that you get judged on the knowledge that you have. So, like, the people that have never heard his name will obviously not be judged as harshly as people that have. But there are also Bible verses that talk about, if you are seeking the truth, if you are genuinely seeking the truth, the Spirit will find you. And I wish I was more familiar with the verses that I'm talking about, but if you do look up these verses, they are addressed in the Bible, and there are videos that I've watched that do address that question of people that have either never heard of Christ's name or have not given themselves up to Christ. To answer your question bluntly, I do believe if you do not accept Christ as your Savior, no, I don't believe you're saved.
So you believe in a hell and a heaven?
Yes, I do believe in eternal separation from God is what hell would be. Yes. And it depends on who you ask, but there are like levels to that. So like there's like worse versions of hell, if that makes sense.
Dante's Inferno.
Right.
Type deal.
Right. There are worse versions. But yeah, I do believe that. But I also believe if you are genuinely searching the faith, if you are searching the ultimate truth, I do think you do come back to Jesus. And partially this is, as a critical thinker and a historian, there are more copies of what was written in those times. There's more copies of the book of Isaiah, there's more copies of Genesis than anything written about Plato, anything written about Socrates, and people do not bat an eye at those things. Alexander the Great. So if you ask yourself, how do we know history? How do we know what happened back then? We are victim to what people wrote down.
100%. It's what history and information and fact are. Leaders per se, like the people in charge of the information that is fed to the masses, are putting out there for us. The Bible is mass produced and mass sold and mass fed to our current United States population. So of course everyone is going to be very familiar with the name Jesus. Mm-hmm. And there are many other books and many other cultures that are that way. Like you said, like in India, like how many people are going to know about Jesus? Probably a good number of people.
Right.
Probably a good number of people. They're going to understand that. But there they have the idea of like spiritual masters, awakened gurus and whatnot, people tuning into that. And are you familiar with like the repetition of the Christ story across different religions? Like so Horus in Egypt, born of a virgin around Christmas time and like all that. Krishna in Indian culture is essentially the same story of Jesus, but under a different name, which are much more ancient, air quotes, teachings. You know, they've been around quite a bit longer than modern day Christianity. And I, for one, do feel like since the church has taken a more political state over the last like couple thousand years, that's why Christianity has become so big. And Catholicism in general, Roman Catholic church, like they are the wealthiest people in the world. They have more gold, more knowledge, more information, huge libraries, and lots and lots and lots of power.
Yeah. And, Jesus wasn't the first person to claim that he's the Son of God either. That was a very popular claim.
Are we not all the children of God?
So like the literal Son of God as in the Messiah. Like he was not the first person to claim that either. Caesar claimed that he was God. And when I say Son of God, is like Jesus actually was God. So yes, we are children of God, but we are not also God. This goes back to the Trinity.
Are we not all capable of embodying that fully?
We are not capable of dying on the cross because we are not perfect as Jesus was.
There are a lot of people that have been crucified.
Right, but serving as a sacrifice for all of humanity, all of the past sins and all of the future sins, we would not have been able to serve as a sufficient sacrifice.
Can you break that down for us?
What was that?
Can you break that down? Like, what exactly was Jesus the Messiah? Like, what did he do for himself and for
So Jesus
reality?
Was fully human. He was also fully God. He was God in human form. This goes back to the story of Adam and Eve, when Adam and Eve first put their plans ahead of God. And we can talk about Adam and Eve in a little bit, because I think I probably have different opinions on Adam and Eve than a lot of other Christians do. But they turned away from God, and when God killed the animals to clothe them once they realized that they were naked and once they had that shame, that served as the first sacrifice for humanity's sake. So temporarily that they were kind of washed away of that sin. Obviously they kept sinning, so they kept being made unright in God's eyes. And throughout, Jewish history, there were sacrifices. There were literally sacrificial lambs that were slain like twice a year in order to temporarily
appease
God.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what Jesus is, the literal Lamb of God, and that he was the most perfect sacrifice that anybody could ever ask for, because he was a human that was tempted and did have temptations. He did have a flesh that might have wanted certain things, but he led the perfect life. So when he died and rose again, he served as the perfect sacrifice for not only the past sins, but all of future sins as well. That is the doctrine of Christianity.
So God has created life, endowed them with free will, allowed them to make mistakes, imbued himself as a human, allowed himself to be killed to free the people that he gave the free will to.
Yes, I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm all right with what you just said. Yeah.
I was trying to make it as simple as I could.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm still not entirely clear on let me reframe. Do you believe, for instance, you mentioned Adam and Eve. Do you believe that literally? Is that history to you?
So I heard one quote that I've really heard about a lot of the Old Testament is that it might not be fact, but it's true.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And that does make sense to me, personally.
I have kind of gone the other way for a while. I will admit to you that I didn't necessarily believe that the story of Adam and Eve was factually true, and it was kind of just a way for God to explain to us why we are the way we are. It kind of explains the human condition, and that's something that I believed in for a very long time. Mm-hmm. There's this idea that death didn't exist in the world until Adam and Eve fell, and I've actually been watching a video series on Genesis that explains that might not necessarily be true. Adam and Eve might not necessarily have been the first humans to exist.
Right.
But they were the first priestly couple, if that makes sense. So Adam would have been the first, technically, child of God.
Because as Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, they entered into a society full of people.
Right, exactly. You're exactly right,
Grown
Clayton.
people, yeah.
Yeah, that is. So There's
So
and-
obviously they weren't the only. There was
right, and that's something that I believe that maybe not a lot of Christians realize or a lot of Christians believe, but that is something that I also believe. And I just want to get this out of the way too. Like, I believe in evolution. Like, I
mean,
think,
Adam and Eve, the atom and the evolution. You
Right.
know, like,
right.
it's all symbolic too.
Yeah.
Very much so.
A lot of that is like, was Satan actually a literal snake? Probably not. He was a serpent. He was a serpentine being, which is a kind of a difficult concept. It's like kind of like a
I feel like
a spiritual
some of our-
figure.
yeah,
Yeah,
our listeners might be
reptilian, if you
familiar
will.
with reptilians.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a serpent. He was a serpentine being that tempted them, and like the knowledge. I mean, what they ate was from the knowledge of good and evil. And it's not even that tree was bad, because a lot of people ask, well, why would he put that there if he knew that they were going to do that? And it's like, he probably
What is
knew.
the knowledge of good and evil other than descending into a third dimensional reality of this and that duality?
Right.
So sounds like the story was of beings being of a essentially higher dimensional nature that chose to partake in the ideas of what good and evil and separation and duality would be. So like, oh, here we are out of a unification into separation and awareness
Right.
of our individualities.
Right.
And the actual sin that they committed was not that they just ate from a tree.
It was that they disobeyed God.
It was that they
Separated
were not, and like we talked about
God.
earlier, disobeyed God. They did not trust in his plan, because he probably he might have introduced that tree to them in a little bit. And Eve already started like deceiving God's word. He didn't say that you couldn't touch it, you just can't eat it. But when the serpent talked to Eve and said, well, did he really say that? He said, she was like, well, we're not even allowed to touch it. She's already like manipulating God's word, which is a sin that is done today as well. Like, did he really say that? Or I don't really like the idea of, I don't like that idea. I'm going to twist this so it makes sense for me and it makes sense for my life, kind of thing.
I want to call God a she.
I have not looked into that, but I think that there are reasons we call him a he,
I feel like
but I'm not familiar enough to talk about that.
right.
But
I feel like if
really, he's
God
beyond
were a
a
person,
gender.
Right. I like to call
he's
it
he's beyond
It.
the gender, first of all, but
Most
I'm
definitely.
just being a little facetious.
no, I got
My
you.
grandma always told me, she was like, if God were an actual person, I would love to see God as a beautiful black woman.
Right.
Wouldn't that shake the world up? And I was like,
Probably.
and she is a pseudo-Christian, has a lot of her roots in spiritual belief from Christianity, for sure. And that just always tickled me as a kid. I was like, that's so funny, Grandma.
Yeah, you say a black God, but Jesus was black.
Exactly. White
he's
Jesus
Middle
don't
Eastern.
exist.
Yeah,
Like-
he's Middle Eastern, and like that's something that's so indoctrinated to my mind. Like I know that, but like even when I do imagine Jesus, like he's white first, like, and that's just something
It's
that
such
I've been,
an image that's been implanted and
it's
ingrained.
such an image
and
that's been
that makes me
implanted.
question everything else too, because
Right.
of like that indoctrination in our minds. Like, white Jesus isn't anything that ever existed.
Right.
It's just an image that we have created to make white people more superior, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that stems from Roman Catholicism too, because all those
Don't get me
and
started.
those are great. Like those are great works of art. Like don't get me wrong. Like the actual if we're judging this like in a vacuum, like the paintings of Jesus and Mary, like they are beautiful, and like there's a reason that they've lasted this long. But yeah, it's not accurate. It's not.
Is it because
Well,
we've lived in a white supremacist regime for a
I
couple
don't
thousand years?
think that
or-
it has those roots, honestly. I think they're more benign. I think it was that they didn't have the internet in the days that they were making this art, in the days that they were
So
getting...
they wanted to make it in their own images.
Exactly.
Like, they wanted to make
exactly,
it relatable.
which is why we think
Yeah.
of God as a he or a she. Like, God
That's a
is
good
not
point.
a human. God is...
everything.
Exactly.
Like, what if I said that we're all God, sparks of divinity, experiencing the world as that divine truth and self, just through another expression, like a finger on the hand of it all?
That's similar to how I feel for sure, but just on the point though too, like think about it this way: if we were horses and we were trying to think about like what the creator was, we would imagine a
Nay.
horse-like figure,
Nay.
because all we can do is think about things in similar symbolisms that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
That's how people
God's
can
a
understand
centaur.
things.
So you guys do both believe in a in an all-natural being, if you don't mind me asking that.
I believe in a supernatural being for
What
sure.
do you mean all natural?
Or I meant just like that was a bad word to pick.
An
You believe in a creator.
presence.
Is basically the easiest. Do you believe that there was a one creator for all of this?
Well,
And it might not be as like a human, but like it could be like a force. It could be a spirit.
I
type of
don't
thing.
believe or feel to even one iota that it's anything separate of anything. It's not separate of us, these baffles, these microphones. It just is. It is everything. Anything that we could surmount as God would be the largest, most inclusive idea that I could possibly comprehend, to me.
Yeah.
So, do you think that this was always here?
I think that it's a constant progression.
So there was like no. So would you say you wouldn't believe in the Big Bang?
I didn't experience it.
Right.
There's a lot of
Me neither.
science that leans me towards that direction. We can measure the expansion of our universe. We can measure the microwave frequencies that are still moving and still present, that some will say that this is clear evidence of the Big Bang. But I do believe that we all started as one point, and through the progression of what is, who we are, as humans, as divine, as God even, that we're just continually developing. We developed an awareness that we are, and that awareness has made us individuals, made us separate. But I believe as that awareness is developing, we are becoming aware of the innate truth that we are all one, all connected, all part of that divine. And now we're consciously choosing to grow with it or not.
Or to turn away from it.
Which
right?
is like,
Which you would call sin.
Yeah.
Turning
Yeah.
away from
Yeah.
oneness,
Sure.
the connection to.
And so,
Uh,
do you think? So I guess from a morality standpoint, do you maybe not even a morality standpoint, but
ethics.
so you
morality.
say we're all one. So do you think that? So you don't believe that like there's like this hierarchy, like as humans we aren't the hierarchy of
No, I mean,
Right.
the
Okay.
lowest, most murderous human to the highest, most peaceful butterfly. Like,
We're all
we're
the same.
interconnected. Like, I'm going to break it down scientifically. Okay, atoms, blam, poof,
Yeah.
split. Everything's made up of quarks. It's all the literal same basic components.
which even quartz aren't a thing. It's not a finite form. It's an energy that's like moving and almost pretending to be.
And
a
they've
form.
literally measured how these particles are hopping in and out of what they call the void of space-time, the
Right.
cosmic vacuum, if you will. Which to me, like that cosmic vacuum, that void, that's closer to God
That's the
than any
goddess.
of this. Like, yeah, the goddess. So, you know,
Because
that
it's
a
that
more feminine,
receptive.
energy. But you know, you break it all down to the point where science has it now. We see that there's literally not a difference between a damn thing. You know, everything that seems so vastly different, scientifically, we've broken down and realized it's all made of the same thing, the same energy. So when everything is the same thing, there's no room for extremity, no room for extras, no room for exclusion, not even room for inclusion, because we don't have to include anything at all because we already are that. Like, it's
Right, which is to say that we are all already perfect, which is like the opposite of what you said earlier, but it's also the same thing. Because when I say we're all perfect, I mean that in our imperfection, we're perfectly exactly the puzzle piece that we need to be.
Yeah.
With our flaws and with our strengths, it all leads up to the eventual unity that we came
Yes, exactly.
from. You know, it's a full
to
circle
me,
thing
the
happening.
return of Christ, the return of God would be the return of true love and compassion, connectiveness and unity amongst all of life,
and
humanity.
experience.
The Christ, like my grandma, my other grandma always taught me, you know, she's very Christian. You don't need to go to church. It won't hurt. But it's a personal relationship with God, with Christ. It's important. And I feel that in my heart. I feel Christ. I feel love. When I think of Krishna, Buddha, Ganesh, I feel that same love through an idealistic, artistic, energetic portrayal of these different aspects of the divine.
If I may, I just want to kind of like break down what you're saying, because I feel very similar to, and obviously we've had many discussions, Clayton and I, about these
Right.
types of things. Just to break it down, though, I feel like just to ground it into like another representation of the creation story, this is how I would put it. So to answer your question a minute ago, do I believe in a creator, a one creator? Yes. And let me put it like this. So imagine that there's the void, like before time, and the void to me is God. Like, it's not the lack of God. That is
If he's God, he was always present.
Exactly. So within that void, and to me the void is a feminine, like yin type of energy. It's that open, blank slate, blank canvas, whatever. So out of that, there's the spark of light. And I'm telling this story as if it's a linear thing.
Right.
But it's not.
Right.
Because it's always happening right now. It's happening in our cells. It's happening on a molecular level, blah, 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 blah. So there's nothing.
That's how we can conceptualize it.
Exactly. It's the horses seeing it as a horse. So there's the nothingness, and then from nothingness, everything arises out of that like a spark of light, And to me, that is that eternal flame. That's God. That's the yang aspect of God, is the light. So to me, like, Christ to me just means the light. But anyway, let me go on with the story. So now you have God. You had the feminine God. Now you have the masculine God. I'm not talking about genders here. And so now God's everything. He's just fucking flying through the cosmos, like making anything he wants or whatever. He's like, well, it's just me, So there's like a boredom in air quotes, in a human way. That's one way of understanding. Like, it's not just boredom, but it's like curiosity or something. It's creativity. So he decides to create something out of nothing. So
what if I were to divide this all-inclusive awareness amongst many different forms and vessels that are able to experience each other in every possibility of life, resulting in action, love, bliss, pain, hatred, darkness, light, all of it, and just God experiencing itself as life, as beauty, as movement, like
it's something. It's not nothing.
It's not nothing. And I do really appreciate the beauty and the way that you experience your connection through Christianity, through that light, and just bringing it all in.
For sure. I mean, every perspective is definitely like beautiful and valid. But let me finish the story though. Okay, so yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like the fun of creation, right? Did you ever play The Sims?
I get excited.
Yeah.
Okay, so just like building a house in The Sims was fun, Then you put your characters in there.
Put him in the pool and then take the ladder out so he's stuck.
That's always what someone brings up. So, like you're building houses and stuff, and like that's fun for a while, but then you're like, okay, well, the novelty's worn off. Like, my point is, like, at first, I feel like it was just that these were just forms of consciousness. Out of the formlessness, there was form. But then the forms were just like toys that God was playing with. But then that got boring or whatever. So then I feel like God decided that it had to almost kill itself, in air quotes, and like fragment its oneness into becoming these forms. So it's like putting the breath of life into all of these toys. They're not toys in them anymore. Now they're you and me. So these are the animals and the people and the humans and the whatever else. And so I feel like what we're doing here on earth to come to our awakening, to come to our heaven, or however you might describe it, is recognizing that we not only are we the children of God, but we are literally God. And I don't mean that in a blasphemous way, like, I am the creator of the universe.
I'm God.
But in a sense, I am innately connected with the creator of the universe. And I think that's what awakening is like
moving with the oneness and realization that we are all that is. Just experiencing it from Michael, Sean, or Clayton right here now.
Totally. It's doing exactly what Jesus did. It's like taking the time and contemplation to like come to an experiential recognition that Christhood is within our hearts. Like it's not something in our brain, and that's where we all get so crazy trying to figure things out conceptually, trying to put it in a history book, trying to put it in scripture and whatever. And I'm not knocking like sacred texts at all. I think that those are all beautiful. Like I think of them as metaphors personally, and I respect,
Jesus spoke in nothing but parables.
Exactly.
Literally.
Yeah. He was like, how do I teach this to people? I can't just tell everyone that we're all God because I'm going to get literally killed. That would be blasphemy. How do I explain this in a way that's going to make sense? Oh, I know. I'll put it in a story. I think that's so wise. It's something that like I think I would do better to like try to explain some of my ideas to people.
Right.
It's like figure out a way of like putting it into a metaphor, putting it into a story, something that people can relate to. You know?
I speak in metaphors really often, but I don't find any better way of saying it half the time than
Yeah.
saying it, because I don't have a fear of people taking me down just because I'm speaking my truth. Like, I'm not going to just speak in parables and metaphor to avoid some sort of persecution of
It's a totally
people.
different world too.
Yeah, totally different world, because there are
um,
so many people that are sharing that now
Mm-hmm.
and being like, yo, I am, so are you. Let's make it move.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess so. You guys acknowledge the human Jesus actually lived. Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
Well, you know,
do you view Jesus as an historical figure or not?
I never met him. Same
Right.
with
I
I
would
never
say yes and no.
experienced the Big Bang. I
Exactly.
like to believe that he was this fully aware, fully embodying of God, God walking the earth, light bearing, beautiful man that was able to share that with all the people that he crossed paths with. I like that idea. I like that feeling. It makes me happy in my heart, 100%.
Mhm.
But also I postulate, the other side of that coin, flip it over. What do we got? Like an idea, an energy, an ever-present part of humanity.
I'm going to say basically the same thing by saying yes and no. I think it goes back to what you said about the Bible, or the Old Testament specifically. I would say, do I believe in Jesus? Well, it might not have been a fact, but it was a truth.
Okay.
To me, it's a symbol of like one path of awakening. And I think that there are many paths to awakening, but his is a very holistic in that he wasn't just a monk that became enlightened in a cave and never integrated with the community. He was a Jewish man who got enlightened and wherever he did. And he came back and integrated that, and he embodied that and shared it with everyone that he came in contact with, and tried to inspire that in his community. That's my idea of what he did.
But in the literal sense, you're not quite convinced if he was a person that was walking on this earth 2,000 years ago.
My normal ego would say, yeah, I do kind of believe that he's a historical figure, but
Okay.
my less ego version of myself would say something very
Right.
esoteric that I don't know that you guys would resonate with. But to me, anything out of this present moment doesn't even exist.
Share your thoughts, your feelings.
I just did.
Okay.
Anything out of this present moment doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So to me,
Okay.
everything is story. Everything is metaphor. And I know that's super heady, and I don't know that I have the energy to try to integrate that into this conversation.
No, I appreciate that, man.
But just
That's-
given the honest response.
I
yeah.
appreciate that.
I thought you were going to say more, my bad.
No, because I don't want to. I'm not here to convince anyone of that belief system.
Right.
But the eternal moment. Like we're walking through this dream space. It's a maze.
I love that I don't feel like any of us are really intending to convince overly. Not too much, maybe subconsciously.
No, we're just
But
sharing energy.
Sharing energy, and I love the parallels between all of our ideas.
Right.
The mirror
It's all 'cause
images.
it's all coming from we all are believing it's all coming from the same place.
It's all coming from the heart.
It
Like
all's
we're
it
just
all's
sharing a
coming
bunch of
from the
love
same
right
place.
now.
Central source for sure.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I was gonna say, well, I was hoping you would just say yes, because I was gonna say
Couldn't give you the easy answer.
Because don't get me wrong, like to be honest with you, what you guys are saying, I was in that spot, like I was talking about a few years ago, and that's that's kind of how I viewed the world too, like multiple ways to get to a truth, multiple et cetera, and it really doesn't happen until because you can't logic your way into Christianity. You can only logic your way so much, right? You can only use logic so much, but until you actually see the fruit changing in your life, which I have seen, and it has been so like clear cut, like this is clearly when this happened. Like once I had this belief, I started, depression went away, anxiety went away, and to go back to, this is kind of off of a tangent, to go back to your shrooms where you're saying, I absolutely think God is right there with you. I
totally.
absolutely think that. And I think used similar type of things in my life to open my eyes and just, first of all, like, even though he might not know that this is the best way to do that, he knew that I needed to go through that in order to just tear off that layer, first of
Yeah,
all. Because
absolutely.
you've got this cloak on you. You're not letting yourself be who you are. So open this up so that I can come there.
Pull back
So-
the wool.
Yeah.
And that's
Well-
what I would just call mental conditioning, or the ego. You know,
Right.
we've grown into an ego and it becomes a hardened shell unless we have experiences that pierce through that. Yeah. And a lot of
Right.
times for a lot of people in our generation, it does take psychedelics or some kind of like near-death experience or something.
How
something
malleable
intense.
can we maintain such a rigid thought system?
Exactly.
So like sometimes those rigid thoughts got to get rounded off, smooth, even other times ripped out and thrown away. And then okay, got a squishy brain now. I got something to work with. You're not just a rigid idea. You're now open, receptive, expansive, psychedelic to the literal definition, like open-minded, expansive. Like
And well, and I was gonna say, I know I backtrack there, but
You good?
I get excited.
in order for Christianity to be true, there's really only a few things that you need to believe in. You need to believe that Jesus was here, he was God, he died, and that he was resurrected. Because if he did that, if those things happened, he said all those things were going to happen. So that kind of makes me think that all the other things he said, things saying like the only way to get to the Father is through me, and that's why I hesitate. This idea of universalism, multiple truths, which are fair, and it's a really attractive idea. And don't get me wrong, like this is something I struggle with daily, like, because I know that there are people like you guys who like seem very loving, and there are a bunch of people that are probably really close to the right path. But when I see a verse like that, him saying the only way to the Father is through me, makes me think that I do need to. This is the only truth. There's a lot of truth to a lot of what you're saying, I believe. But whether it's the actual truth in its wholeness, I'm not sure.
Like
But-
you said, his parable.
right.
Through me, like the Christed
What
heart,
does that mean?
the ignited heart. Like
Good point.
the only
What does that
way
even
to
mean?
God is through me. And to me, Christ in my life is that unconditionally loving sinner, that wide open
the
door.
I am.
It is the I am presence. I am here.
Yeah.
I am now. I am God. I am the way. And not me personally. Don't worship me. Do not start a religion. And that's not what I want, but like, so are you. And I think that's all he was really ever trying to say. And the more people that can tune into Christ, tune into that ever present energy of I am, that is the way to God. I say that like it is truth, but it's totally 100% how I feel and what Christ is to me. So I can't say 100% that he was this physical man that died, resurrected, came back to life, but I feel like we are living in the times of the resurrection and return of Christ,
Right.
which is the return of this ever-present loving energy. I am God on earth, like walking together with all of humanity in its wholeness. Not just humanity, but all of life on earth in general. Like one day we're going to be singing Kumbaya. And
You do
Yeah.
think that's possible on this earth, that we can, all these wars are going to stop?
I
and
feel
all this,
like the
all this
idea
hatred.
that heaven is outside of all of this is part of the reason why we are so willing to destroy earth in our process to gain freedom in heaven. Because we are writing off earth as this worldly place that's not going to save us. We are turning it into a living hell because we're not caring for our Mother Earth that provides for us unconditionally, lovingly. We are turning earth into that hell that is so feared, that hot, freaking fiery place. People are not being taken care of, and that's because of people. That's because of the lack of being in that center of Christ.
That
I
lack of
am
connection.
presence, that lack of connection with it all. And, I feel like we are shunning away our ability to have heaven on earth by feeling like we can receive it outside of here. That
love
when
that.
we die here, that we'll go there or we'll go there. But like we're creating hell on earth because we're trying too hard for a heaven that's not even here.
Man, I absolutely love that. And that's exactly what it's about too, and that's bad theology, that we do think that heaven is this outside thing. And it is, he is making a new earth here. Like we are all coming back here. Like that's what the book says.
Our soul, this is where we're meant to be.
Yeah, he's making this world. When he comes back, he's making this world right. Like it is going to be like right here.
Exactly. So
And-
that return of Christ, why not let it ignite all of our hearts and open
Right.
all of us up? Not in the idea of Christianity, I worship Christ. I see it as separate or anything above me. It's just fully opening myself up to that love, that connection and
Yeah.
presence of being.
Right. When I hear about the story of Jesus and of the coming of Christ, you know, I just don't think it's going to be an external thing. I think, yeah, Christ is going to come again, but it's going to be through me. It's going to be through you. You know, when Christ comes for you, I feel like it's going to be through your heart. Like, it's not going to be an
You're not going to
external
meet this
like,
man.
angel
He's
that
not
comes
gonna
down.
save
I
you.
mean, if that's how you want to manifest it, you know,
Mhm.
do you. But to me, like, that's my intuition, is that in my journey, like, I don't think that Christ is going to come in the form of a savior for me other than through me, you know? And that's something that I can say and I feel it in this moment. And then my ego comes online and is like, oh, but you're not good enough. You know, are you really going to break through all your bullshit? You seem pretty lazy, you know, that type of shit. And it's just like, that's where compassion, or what you would call grace, comes in.
Mhm.
It's forgiveness
And
of
faith.
myself for being an ego. Forgive myself for being a small child who went through experiences and became, you know, a conditioned adult and whatever,
Right.
who's like struggling to just be me, you know? But it is no struggle. I'm here. Like, this is me. And I'm not saying that I'm the coming of Christ. I'm saying that when Christ comes again, I feel like that was a prophecy for self-transformation. And that's all that I stress, is that it's from the inside out rather than the outside in.
And I think I'm saying the same thing.
I think so.
It is a
100%.
self.
I think so,
It is
too.
a self transformation.
Mhm.
It also is what I would say, and where we're disagreeing with. It is literally, no, he was a human. He is going to come down on this earth and make this world better. But that's where we're at right
and
now.
If
and
that happens, I would love that. Like, that would be really cool. That'd be really cool. And then I'd be like, I always loved you, but just as much as I love myself. Like,
And he would say, exactly.
he'd be like, damn straight, brother. You
What's
want
the
to hit this
difference?
doobie? No, I'm just kidding. Like, I bet Jesus smokes pot, though.
Jesus is pot. What are you talking about?
Ganja.
No, but I totally feel you. And like, and I believe that, we are all creating our own individual reality. We're all creating our own dream within this infinite dream. And it goes on forever, man. And that to me is God, is the infinite dreaming, and the oneness and the void and the everything within every single atom and every single cell. Like, that's the divine spark. To me, God is mystery. Like, I went through, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I think, I was extremely Catholic. Like, I got really into it because I was looking for that sense of connection,
Right.
and I went to a Catholic school, and I had a teacher who was really passionate about his faith, and that inspired me. But then I found that I was judging, like, everything that I saw on TV. I was judging my family for not being, like, crystal
Do not
clear,
judge
perfect.
lest ye be judged.
Exactly. But for me, it ended up, I was like, okay, I gotta, like, think for myself a little bit more and, like, just kind of whatever, be a teenager. So you could say that was my, like, darkness, was like falling away, that was my turning away from God, so to speak. And that went on for, high school. And in college, I took this class called Spirituality and Empowerment. And that was really what brought me back to, like, my curiosity with spirituality. We did yoga in that class and we meditated. And to me, that was so powerful because it was not a thought. It wasn't a conceptualization of spirituality. It was an experience. We were actually sitting together in a circle and going with them, and like meditating, someone guiding us through this meditation. And then the yoga, same thing. Like, it was a personal experience. We're stretching out our, limitations. We're like breaking through our limitations of the muscle. I don't know how else to say it, but, getting into alignment with the fluidity of the creative divine. Now I've had so many experiences since then of, like, just recognizing that, that's just big highlighter out just from within. That's my big thing. It's just, we are all, like, dreaming within this big dream. And okay, let me put it this way. At the end of one's life, I feel like, no, the lights aren't just going to go out. We're not just going to be the void. I think we're all going to see what we believe. Like, what did we spend our whole life believing, For me, I resonate very deeply with Buddhism and Taoism. Like, at the end of my life, maybe I'll see the Buddha the way I've been the Buddha on LSD and deep meditations, And at the end of your life, maybe you'll recognize that you're Jesus, or Jesus will come to you if that's what you want, you know? And in this lifetime, when we all ascend, because I totally believe that we can and will ascend in this lifetime, I believe that we live in an extremely, like, fortunate, even though it seems so dark on earth right now.
When you say ascend, do you mean like literally ascend or spiritually?
Spiritually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. I didn't know if you like actually meant like raising, like out of like to space or something.
Oh no.
Okay,
I just mean spiritually. I just mean raising.
I was just asking. Sorry.
I've had an
Fair
experience.
question.
I was just talking to Sean about where LSD. Peak of the experience, I literally ascended into space, into the cosmos, left my physical body behind, and I recognized these celestial bodies that I've only, heard of and thought, and I'm floating as a non-physical being through space and time, and seeing these, less time, more space, seeing these stars and gaseous balls and swirling forces and a literal, like, choir. Like, it felt to me like I felt like angels were singing to me.
I was just about to say they could have been.
Yeah, and
They could have been.
do you know what they
Totally.
sang? They said, "Life is an endless trip." And I entered back into my body, and I witnessed myself float down as if my whole body had floated up. And I slid into my shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was, "You're on your way to becoming a man." I was like, wow, weird. And then all my friends look at me like, what just happened? Because I was going from laying on a couch, now all of a sudden I was standing upright in my shoes that were off. They like it's like they missed it, but they saw it and they noticed that whatever happened wasn't something that would have normally happened under your typical physical parameters of this dimension. Something crazy just happened, and they were like, "What the hell?" And I'm sitting there like, "Life's an endless trip." That's what I said to them, and I sat down, and they're all like, "Yeah, man."
Yeah, and
feel
like I
that.
said, man, I don't know if I would have eventually found God without psychedelics either.
Yeah,
and I just
truly.
think that's what's so interesting about it is that he's using, I think he
Tools.
put me here for a reason. And
I
I don't,
You're
like,
beautiful, man.
There's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, another thing I would like to share with you guys, I've been listening to Synchronicity podcasts a lot, and the host of that one's been really into the work of Neville Goddard, and I think he was around in like the 40s or something and did like, talks where he would spread his philosophies and stuff, and his big thing was that imagination is literally like divinity. So, which totally, Neville Goddard went really deep into this stuff. I think you would really resonate with him, honestly, because he used the Bible and Christianity and all that as his method for explaining and orienting himself into his experiences and stuff. But the whole idea is that imagination is truth, and this physical reality is actually the dream. And so that there's just this empty imagination space, kind of like what I was talking about with the void. And then we're just imagining things happening, And he uses this as like a method of literally like aligning yourself into the best versions of yourself. And I could break down the technique for you real quick if you want. Basically, you just get into like a meditative or hypnagogic state, like right before you fall asleep.
Right.
That like really weird.
Weird.
You're not asleep, but
You're
like,
awake, but
you gotta
can't
get
move.
into the weird,
Yeah.
man. Just enter into the weird.
Exactly. Just start having weird thoughts and like maybe visuals,
Images, colors,
yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Right. So when you're in that state, like just think about something. Well, before you do the technique, you have to think of something that you really want. And that's a question that not everyone asks themselves. Like, what do I really want out of this life? It doesn't have to be like the big question. What do you want out of your life? It could be something simple, like, what do I want right now for dinner? Or something, you know what I mean? Like, it can be something simple. So pick one thing for when you try the technique, and when you're in that state, imagine yourself from your point of view, not like you're watching a movie, like not from a third party perspective. Imagine it from within your body that whatever you want has already happened. So if you wanted, corn on the cob for dinner, then like you imagine yourself like whatever you would be doing after eating corn on the cob, you know what I mean? But like you put yourself into that vision of whatever you've wanted has already happened. So like, let's take it to, you know, what we're talking about in this conversation. Let's imagine that we all have woken up, like Christ has come back again. Just kind of like put yourself in like, how would you feel in that moment? Like it's already happened, you know? And so basically what you're doing is training yourself to align with that experience by like testing out how that would feel. And so you like really charge yourself up with that love and gratitude and like faith and trust and all those delicious energies, and then just trust that it'll happen. And then see if it happens. So when I tell people this, I say like start with something super simple.
What did you use last time? A Snickers bar.
Yeah, Snickers bar.
So like you always get grumpy when you're hungry.
Exactly.
So just imagine that Snickers.
Right. Yeah, so in that example I was saying like, but then after you do the technique, like don't go out and buy a Snickers bar because then you're not going to train yourself that
That's
it
where
actually
the
works.
faith, the manifestation process of allowing it to happen. You've embodied it. You've felt it. It's a thing. It's already happened. Not looking at
mind.
time as a linear.
Mhm.
And then it does happen. It's along the same lines as the concept of reality being a physical manifestation based on the realities of thoughts and feelings from essentially higher dimensional energies rooting themselves into the physical dimension, because it's one of the last places that energy condenses itself. And allowing thoughts, energy, feeling, manifestation, visualization to be what it is and experience. It's like, are we really experiencing everything because we want to, or because that's what we've thought about, ingrained in, and those are the experiences that we are attracting? Questions, answers, maybe one day, but same concept, basically.
Right. And I see it sort of as just a specific way of prayer, too. Like, I think that that's what, you know, Jesus was doing when he was trying to awaken himself. I think that, to me, that technique and just imagination in general, because we all do this in subconscious ways that we're just less aware of, but this is just a conscious way of doing what we already do. You know, usually we think, what's going to happen next? Oh, whatever happened yesterday, or, you know, whatever my emotions are telling me that I'm worthy of experiencing, you know. So like, let me take it to a school, you know, you got a big test coming up or something. And like, I didn't study, I'm going to fail. Like, you know,
With that attitude, you will.
Exactly. So we already, like, you're envisioning that you're going to fail. But then, like, dude, I didn't study, but I'm going to ace it because I paid attention in class. Or, like, I didn't even pay attention, but I'm a divine being, you know, I'm going to make this happen. And then,
every
like,
test ever.
Manifesting the truth.
That's
That's
like
like
literally.
truth. Yeah.
but like you're saying, you can actually do that. Like
Exactly.
literally.
That's what I'm
Literally.
saying.
And
yeah.
it's not like exhibiting control. It's quite the opposite. It's allowing it to be. You're creating these thoughts and these patterns, but you can't make it happen physically. You can't grab it life and shake it up. This is how it's going to be. It's
And
like,
that's where the faith and trust
that's
comes
where the
in.
faith and trust comes in, the divine allowance of yourself to receive divine energy, God, Christ, whatever you want to put it as. It's
Right.
letting it occur, allowing it to happen, because you can't be like, I'm the best Christian, I'm the best person, good Christ is with me. You know, you're going to end up scaring your friends away. Like, and, you know,
And it's not just like a tactic for like getting what you want or whatever. To me, it's literally just a spiritual practice for communing with the divine, you know, however you may see that. Again, I like to really reiterate how important it is to like be in the feeling, the energy, and the embodiment. You know, we're human right now. I'll speak for myself. I live so much in my mind. I don't know about you, man, but I'm thinking all the time, you know? So to me, like, it's so important to not get caught up in the thoughts of, like, what I think things are supposed to be. Let me figure out the puzzle. It's like getting into the energy of, like, Christliness, man. Everything's cool. Like, love is real. Like, we're
How
divine
often-
sparks, you know? However you want to put it.
how often are we just stuck in our heads and pulling ourselves further away from like the reality of all that is? And then, you know, hopefully we are able to have those moments where we can take a deep breath, tune on in, ask for it, receive it. You know, it's really as simple as that half the time. Asking, you shall receive. Truly, it's something that I've practiced quite often, and it's allowed to be. But
Yeah, a lot of truths to what you're saying that apply to my faith as well.
Yeah.
And that's what you were saying. Like, that is what I would call prayer. Like, asking, and if you're asking from a genuine spot, like, not just for your worldly gain, not just for your glory, like, you will receive that. And that's something that I believe too. And I believe that's coming from my God, which I just happen to believe is the Christian version of God.
That's beautiful.
That I still believe.
For sure.
But that's what I'm saying, is like, that's why people have this idea of what Christianity is, and it's just, it isn't the embodiment. And like, nobody hated that more than Jesus, because he would, if you know anything about the Pharisees were these Jewish, like, officials, Jewish priests that they knew the Torah, the Old Testament's like front and back, but their hearts weren't in it. You know, they were in it for the glory.
Gotcha.
And I think we still see that today.
Joel
People,
totally.
yeah, people and I'm not huge on him either.
But I just feel like he would be a prominent
Yeah,
Christian
but he's exactly, and I don't want to, that's
Right.
I don't know his faith, like whether he, kind of
if he actually is,
right. I
like,
don't know. I'm not in his head. It's
Right,
impossible
exactly.
to know what anybody's genuinely feeling. But yeah, somebody like that, where he. And Paul the Apostle, he writes about that too. These super apostles that are flashy and telling you what you want to hear, kind of thing, instead of getting back to that genuine truth, which is love the God with all your heart and mind, which love your neighbor as yourself. Like, that's what.
And sometimes it's like harder truth too.
Oh, totally.
But it's still loving truth, because when we hear an honest truth that goes against our own ideals and thought processes,
Absolutely.
we're gonna get hurt.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be like, not necessarily like, oh, it was so painful, but it's gonna, like, our egos are gonna take a kick.
Right.
And we're gonna feel a little defeated, a little bruised up. But when that truth is spoken with love and we're open and receptive to it, then we're able to be like, hurts a little bit, but thanks for ripping the Band-Aid off quick. And I'm just saying this because, I'm sitting with my best friend the other night, and he was sitting there 30 minutes telling me a hard truth that I've known in my heart but have been refusing to acknowledge mentally. And that was quite difficult, but he shared it with so much love, so much compassion. And even though that I felt like my brain, but like my ego was just being like tossed around, beaten up. Oh, I'm such a bad person is where I was reaching a couple points. It's too late. I messed up. No, it's not. And my heart, my God within reminded me, like, I'm still here. I'm like, oh.
And you have your friend in your life for a reason. and
Exactly.
they're delivering a divine message to you,
And that was
Which your
beautiful.
point is not always easy to take.
exactly.
Because those hardened ego shells that we've built up throughout all of our lives.
And where does that ego come from? At least for me, like, my ego, like, it's from talking about, like you were saying, instead of like looking, you're looking at how are other people viewing me? Like, I so often throughout almost my entire life was putting myself in the shoes of the ones surrounding me and molding myself, like I said earlier, to what are they viewing me as? Like, what do they, and like, that's where my ego comes from. And that's where my a lot of my sin comes from, is like, still worrying to this day, what are these people thinking about me? And like, that's just my flesh. That's just something that is always going to be a thorn in my side. That's just one of the things I deal with. What are these people
the
thinking
psyche.
of me?
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it wasn't coming from a place of who you are, which seems like you're entering into more and more as you progress on your journey. Because we've all experienced that. We've all felt judgment. And at times, I'm sure every single person has wanted to change some aspect of themselves in order to fit in more. But the more we can tune into ourselves, that love and all of that within, the easier it is to just accept people for who they are. Fuck yeah, I judge people. Like, I don't mean to all the time. Sometimes I'll look at someone and I'll be like, crackhead. I don't really want to think that the first time I see someone who looks a little raggedy walking down my street.
Right.
But it is definitely the first thought that might go through my head, like, oh, crackhead. But then I'll I'll think a little deeper. I'll start feeling it out in my heart, and I'll be like, kind of sucks that they got to that point. I wonder how they got there. Like, genuine human compassion and love comes into interest, but judging's gonna happen. What I'm getting at is that ego still persists, and it's
Ego's
nothing that
there,
we're
man.
ever going to really get rid of. we're going to be the judge. We're going to be judged. It's just a matter of how much we can stay in that presence of I am. You are in that centered heart space and accept it for what it is. A little bit of air brushing over the water's surface, it's not affecting anything deep. It's just topical.
Like you said, that crackhead is just the same, came from the same place as you.
Exactly.
To me, that's a child of God.
Exactly.
With women that I've lusted at, it's like I'm looking at this person differently now. This isn't just somebody that I can look at for my own pleasure. Like, this person was made in the image of God as well.
And they are not that representation.
Not that you don't see a beautiful girl and think, those things. That's like you said, it's hard for that to like go away, but it is a process of like slowly. Those things just happen less, maybe.
And it can be more from a place of respect and just like admiring beauty is not lust. You know what I mean? Like trying to objectify humans, which we all do in numerous ways, not even just sexually, but objectifying a person rather than recognizing their innate dignity.
You can't take a knee for the national anthem. You're just a football player. You can't do that. You're just here for my entertainment.
Exactly.
I don't want this to turn political.
Yeah, there you go. But since you brought up ego, though, I wanted to go into that a little bit more because I think that I define that word a little bit differently than a lot of people do. I think it's commonly seen as ego being like our lesser nature, the parts of us that we're not proud of, which could also be looking to other people, seeing how proud they are and calling that ego too. But I think of ego as literally this whole world to me is ego. To me, like duality is ego. And so it's something that like, yeah, in some sense it's air quotes here, the devil, but in another sense, it's who we are as people. So it's a dance between like, I'm making sure my ego's in check, but also making sure that I'm making friends with my ego. Because that's what I have to work with here.
Without that
we're embodied
component,
spirits.
How could we function? If we're feeling and thinking everything that all beings and particles are thinking and feeling all the time, we'd probably all have seizures and die.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need the ego to eat.
You need,
right?
Yeah.
You need to feed the monkey. Like, I'm
exactly.
hungry.
Yeah, exactly. And to bring it back to, you were speaking about the fall.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the fall was the birth of ego. To me, that's what that story symbolizes, is that it was the moment, however it may have factually happened, again, air quotes here, however it manifests in your mind, the fall is when we decided to stop being one with God, when God stopped being God and decided to turn away from its unity into duality, like we were talking about earlier.
Dissension.
Dissension, right. And dissension creates ascension because you can't have one without the other.
No,
so now we have this game.
Effect.
Yeah. So now we have this game of ascension, and we have to descend into the game in order to play it. You know what I mean? And we're all playing that game whether we
come down
want
to
to recognize it or not.
Come down to experience. If it weren't for the third dimensional reality of duality on Earth, like I've said it before, I'll say it again, like we couldn't experience. We wouldn't have anything other than oneness, other than that bliss, which is a beautiful goal, a beautiful practice, and a beautiful part of life. But don't you want to feel your lover kiss your lips? Don't you want to taste a sip of that cola? Like, don't you want to have some fun and experience, And that's why we're here, I feel like, to experience that. And do I think that physical reality will ever be gone? No, not unless we destroy the earth at the rate we're doing it, and that actually happens. But I feel like changes are being made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be clear, like you're speaking of like you're speaking about not having an ego from what I would call the perspective of ego, though. You're still assuming that you have a body to not have ego in, but I'm saying like bodies in general are ego, because this whole like formed universe, like the Big Bang, the whole universe to me is ego. And at first that sounds scary. It's like, oh shit, are we in some sort of like purgatory or hell or something? Like, well, I don't like spinning it like that. I like spinning it like it's a playful place. It's a creation that
carbon-based
we created.
reality.
Yeah, carbon-based reality. Which I like to think of things as simple as possible. Because like I said before,
you had me fooled.
right.
I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just saying it's just in general, these are pretty heavy topics.
Exactly.
It's kind of hard
Very
to do
heady.
that. Yeah, heady. Yeah,
exactly.
heady's a good way to put
exactly.
it. I was just
No,
poking fun a
I'm
little
totally
bit.
with you. And that's what I was getting at before. Is like I'm a thinker. It's so easy to like overthink about these things and overconceptualize. But like I said before, I just like to keep it simple. Like you're talking about like the literal like scientific like carbon-based life forms, and like you're talking about like this idea like in New Age circles. There's more of like an idea of the order of how things go. But to me, I haven't had those experiences, so I don't like. There's some people that have had experiences where they feel like heaven is their home. They literally came to Earth to like what you're getting at. Like they come here to learn. Like some people view Earth as like
It's just
this,
one
like,
facet of the experience for sure.
But to me, it's just like I'm agnostic when it comes to that. To me, I just like to think of it as like, man, I think this is a dream. I think we're all living in a dream that we're convinced is reality. And when we go to sleep, we become God. That's what I honestly believe. We become the formless, that dreamless state.
And the only way we're able to comprehend it is by attaching symbols
Exactly.
and images that will make sense to our little brains so that we can wake up in the morning and integrate those entirely expansive realities or energies that we just came into contact with.
Exactly.
Or we're more fully part of, so to say.
Right.
Talking about dreams, Alan Watts, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said, and he was a person that I listened to a lot. He said, imagine you could imagine if everything you ever wanted happened. And like every time you like went to sleep, like everything that you ever wanted happened. Like throughout a whole life, you have a whole lifetime of dreaming. And then you wake up and you just realize that it's kind of boring. Like life is the thing where you're like, you don't know what's going to happen. So like next time, his thought was, this is a dream like you're saying. This is why I brought this up. But we don't know what's going to happen because he thinks that that's more fun. Like that's more of like what life is about kind of thing. So you just saying that kind of made me think of that, because if you had the option to like just get everything you ever wanted and like whatever that is, like all the the richest, whatever,
right.
Like
What is the fun? What is the experience?
Where's the fun?
Exactly.
Where's the fun? Where's the growth with that? So that made me think of that.
And that's what you were getting at when you were saying like you're sitting there and like, oh, and then you're totally one, but like nothing makes sense because your relationships don't make sense because it's all just oneness.
You take away the component of ego, everything's oneness. And I said
Exactly.
everyone's gonna have a seizure and die. That was a little intense, but like what I'm getting at. Like we would all be flooded with all this energy and emotion that our little physical vessels probably couldn't even handle. So we have these barriers of self that make it easy to interact. And as soon as we can start seeing the divine in each other, we're not butting egos anymore. We're like shaking hands, giving hugs, loving one another, and recognizing that God in each other. Like namaste, as they would say, and still having this component of ego, like dancing with it, being able to dance with our partners, dance with our friends, expand our circle of connection until eventually here it is.
Totally.
But
Absolutely.
how long is that going to take? Is it ever going to happen? Is it just one step at a time, one group of people at a time? Or is there really this time period where it is the return of the Christ? The return of that love? Maybe the return of the physical Christ? I can't say that's not
Just a
going to
matter
happen.
Right. Just a
I
matter
can't
of
say
what
that
we
it
align
will.
ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And I will say this too, like, after all of us putting out our different perspectives on that divine diamond that you were talking about earlier, Clayton, that we're all seeing different facets of it from a different view, I just want to acknowledge that I really respect where you're at too, because, on one hand, I was talking about, embodiment and not looking to others for like so much guidance, where more so like finding that inner guide within, what you might call the Holy Spirit, but I also really respect the structure of religion and the fact that you have a community to, commune
Share it with.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And that structure for you where, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like what religion does for you is gives you a not definitive, but a more structured idea of how to walk the path. So you're not just like out here.
Well,
on your
yeah,
own.
it is.
Like, yeah.
No, it literally is the sense that is the path.
Yeah.
Like that's very fair to say. I would, yeah.
Which
no doubt.
I feel like myself and a lot of people in my circles may have had very divine experiences, but not necessarily have the structure to sustain it and embody it in our lifestyles. You know, I'm not saying that I'm doing too bad, but I get distracted by stuff. You know, I don't have as finite of like a spiritual practice or routine, you know. You know, like what you were saying earlier, Clayton, your grandma's saying you don't have to go to church, but you have to like whatever. I feel like whether it's church, you know, mass, or like just having something, like maybe just meeting with like a group of really close friends that you guys vibe with, you know, and are able to like support one another, having a support system and something that's regular and routine, I think that's really important, you know.
Yeah. We all need community as humans.
100%.
Like, we were made
Definitely.
to be with one another and to interact with one another. And what Christianity's done for me is I've been able to meet more people that are on that same path as me, and I'm able to grow with because of that. And to your point, like you were saying, and like this is why, like I'm not, like I said earlier, I am Christian because I can see I can see the changes. Like literally, it's like right there. It's so obvious, and like I feel the Spirit, which I've never felt in my life in my body. So like to me, it's like that's my truth. So that's like that's why
That's beautiful.
that's where it is. And like I've had similar thoughts to you guys, obviously different things, but like I've dabbled in Buddhism. I've listened to Alan Watts, like I just said, and like a lot of that was attractive, but it also like kind of made me scatterbrained.
Yeah.
And that's where that structure comes in. It's like I couldn't really grow because I was thinking about this, but I was also like acknowledging this was true, and like, well, maybe this is true. And so like I'm just like right here, like I'm still like on, like whether it's over here, over here, over here. Like once you pick something in your like Christianity,
Actually
which
start walking down that path.
which in my view still is like even if it is made up, in my opinion, it's
your
the
truth.
best. Like just like subjectively, I think it's the best view because I think it makes the most sense because it makes sense why we sin, and it like it's the only like belief system where it's like it's literally none of it is on you. Like you are literally putting it on somebody else, and like through that you're able to grow. Like you don't have to do anything really, which is so like subjectively I think it's the best, and because I've seen myself change, that's why I'm where I'm at.
I
Makes
feel
total
like
sense.
him and I could both say the same thing about the paths that we're walking.
Yeah.
Not that I need to speak for you, Sean, but
Right.
I am who I am now because of the path that I've been walking, you know, finding that spirit within me and allowing it to be a more fuller part of my function and listening to it, communing with it, finding that God within, so to say, and riding that wave and letting myself transform because of it. And almost in the same sense of letting go, which you were getting at. Like, I wouldn't put it in the terms of I'm putting it on anyone else, so to say, but I'm really,
And when I say putting it on like burdens of sin, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
And I know, don't apologize when I cut you guys off. It just happens. It happens for sure. But it's letting go, letting God, you know, letting it be, and letting Spirit take over those things that are out of our control. Fucked up in the past? Well, too late. Can you make it right? Do it. Can you not? Well, don't beat yourself up because of it. Let it go. Let Spirit flourish within yourself, and don't beat yourself up because that's just going to be a mental grasp on some action that you did, or like same as like fear of the future, which is like the same kind of burden that you would let go to Christ, right? Like if you're having fears about what's going to happen, you're going to let that burden be released to the Spirit, to Christ, and just let your freedom fly so you can be more rooted, integrated here now to help the people in your community, to help teach these kids and
And operating from a place of trust, which is so important, you know, because when we do things out of love and out of trust, that bears such more delicious fruit than doing things out of obligation or out of fear or out of, you know, practicality or just, circumstance or whatever it may be.
Analytical
feel like-
practicality is a spirit killer half the time, I feel like. If you're going to live life entirely by irrational means because X equals Y in the end of every equation regardless, then, like, you're going to lose out on a lot of fun, a lot of experience, and a lot of, like, true inner growth, I feel like, if you're just like, all right, what do I do after high school? I go to college. What do I do after college? I get a job. What do I do after that? I get a wife, or I get, a husband, whatever. I adopt, I have kids, like...
Yeah.
That's living by, more indoctrined means or more like rational, analytical. You're always thinking of what the next step is instead of like letting go, letting spirit fill you up and following our hearts, following our passions, our paths, and being that example, sharing it with the world.
Descending from the analytical mind into the heart, and it is a dissension. We think we're high up here in our thoughts.
What's the quote? The longest journey one can take is from their head into their heart.
I don't know that I've heard
Something
that one.
like that. I've heard it a few times. I don't know the
You
exact.
can just take credit for it because we never heard it.
Well, I said this real cool thing.
Go ahead and give me some quotes. But yeah, just descending into the presence, because that's the big difference, is that when we're in the analytical thing, we're looking towards the future, looking back at the past and trying to make sense of it all. But in the present moment, it doesn't have to make sense, because it just does.
It just is.
It just is.
It don't always be like it do, but it is. Right.
And that's not to say that there can't be, sadness, fear, and pain in the present moment. I'm not saying that every present moment is heaven, but if you go deep enough, I think that it can be,
That made me feel good.
Oh, yeah.
That made my heart happy what you said.
Right on. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for talking with us, man. It's been a lot of
and
fun.
I'd be remiss if I didn't invite you guys to come to my church sometime. I'll send you the address, and I think the best way to decide whatever your truth is, and I believe I was put here for a reason, expose yourself to it,
Yeah.
and then come back to make a decision on what you believe. So
I'd love to come worship Spirit with you.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
You guys you can come see what it's like and see. So I will be sure to do that, and let me know if you guys want to come.
I've been to lots of different churches
I would
with
love
lots of
that.
different people.
Yeah,
I'd
I would love that.
Come with you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to our church.
I'm really happy to be here. Really happy. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me, guys. This was really fun.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Michael Pate. I know I did.
It was a lot of fun. I definitely didn't really expect my mind to come to a lot of the, not necessarily conclusions, but endpoints, stop gaps between thoughts, and seeing that everything really is everything else. Just some structures are a little more laid in stone than others.
And, just finding paths to really devote to walking down. I think that was my biggest takeaway from our conversation, was even though the Christian path might not necessarily be my particular destiny, if you will, it's not necessarily the finite path that I'm walking in my life. I respect it a lot. I respect the authenticity and those who pick any religion as it's kind of a scaffolding, like when you're constructing a building, you got the scaffold that you build first, and that helps you build the structure. It's kind of that's how I view religion.
It can really help you to build your own temple, but it's not necessarily the finite end all be all.
Exactly, because you have to walk it. You can't just follow an awakened being and be an awakened being. You have to follow and become. You have to embody
Follow their
that.
teachings on the path to realizing our own selves, essentially. And what a lot of the points we reached today helped me realize that, wow, I've got a lot more structure to add to my own path. Not that I am going to pursue like Buddhism or Christianity as like a finite structured path, but that I can add more structure to my own life. Like I need to set more time aside to devote to myself, to helping my community outside of myself, and actually having that time to listen, meditate, pray, whatever that might be that I need.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think you do need at this point in your life?
That set aside time to sit and listen to myself and hear my own subconscious needs and listen to my body, set that time aside to take care of my home, keep it clean so that my energy can stay flowing, not so that I don't feel so stagnant amongst my stagnant dishes or whatever,
Right,
you know?
Right. We were talking about this earlier, actually, but it's like, you know, you try to sit down, do some yoga or like meditate or something, but if your space is cluttered, then your mind and your energy is going to reflect that.
And you're just going to get frustrated and get up. It's not
Exactly.
going to be conducive to a smooth flow.
Yeah. We had a whole episode on spiritual practices, episode 4, I think, and you know, just kind of just to give a little follow up on that. I mean, I just want to admit to you and myself that, man, I mean, we just moved into the new house and everything, so like definitely been a lot of like distractions with tasks and things to do in life, but I've fallen off my practice so hard. Not like completely. I mean, I'm still like stretching every day to make sure I'm loose, but it's more of like maintenance, more like physical maintenance and less of like a spiritual, like I'm gonna really like dive into this energy, like not worry about time, not worry about what I gotta do next, not just get it in so that I can go to work and not be, you know, in pain when I leave.
I totally
you
get
know?
that.
Yeah, so that's the kind of structure that I'm trying to implement.
It's like you're just
I am
surviving,
implementing.
not holding that space for thriving. Just,
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat, to be honest. And I don't know, having this conversation with Michael Pate really helped me realize that a little more structure to my spiritual practice and just a little more will to be part of that structure within myself is going to do so much good for me, my practice, my life, and
Yeah.
how I share myself with the community. So I hope anyone who listens into this is going to be able to not necessarily pick up that same message, but definitely a point that I would like anyone listening to hold on to and meditate on a bit and help see what structure we can add to our practice to help ourselves become that person that we know we are deep down that we might not be acting as all the time.
Absolutely. Just kind of aligning with our higher nature, you know? I mean, living our best lives type of thing, you know? And it
Truly.
doesn't have to be an obligation. It doesn't have to feel like homework. Oh, man, I gotta, like,
No, it's got to be playful.
Yeah,
Turn
like,
on
it can
some
be
music,
fun.
clean your house, dance
Yeah.
while you do it, realize you're letting go of all that old and invite that new energy and freshness
Yeah.
because it's going to do nothing but like satisfy ourselves on the deepest level.
Totally. I mean, honestly, I got excited in the episode talking about this, and I haven't implemented it yet, so I'm glad that we're reminding ourselves now after the fact. But, you know, I want to get nerdy with it. Like, I want to have some fun, like, sitting down and, like, actually writing out, like, what I want to do, like, my intentions with my routine.
Dream board, manifestation board.
like, long-term goals, but also just, like, day-to-day, like
Mondays, I take out the trash. Tuesdays, I dust the baseboards. I don't know, but like a little something to just make sure every day we're maintaining ourselves, our own spectrum, inside or out.
just like getting back into my morning and evening routines, honestly. Like, I've just fallen off of that a little bit. It's just been like, get up, drink water, eat breakfast. But like, no, I want to take like an hour or so to get my body right and get my mind right.
Stretch it out for
Yeah.
20 and meditate for 40, and before you know it, you're floating through the rest of your day and accomplishing things that you just wish you had the time before.
Yeah, and another thing that I've recently heard was on the conversation of implementing new habits. Because, you know, I mean, that's a very common thing, and especially in self-help. People are trying to figure out, how do I break bad habits? Well, it's really hard to break bad habits. It's much more effective and actually easier to implement good habits.
for sure.
Good routines. And one trick that I recently heard about being successful in that is devoting to like really easy daily habits. So like,
I'm gonna stretch for 5 minutes and think
literally
about
5
how
minutes.
grateful I am. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Because if it's something really easy, if it's only a 5-minute task, then you're way more likely to do it. Just be like, oh, just do it. You know, it's 5 minutes, or it's like 1 minute. A 1 minute meditation. You can do a 1 minute meditation.
Literally.
You know, set your timer. I'm only doing it for 1 minute. I'm
Just
good now.
one. But I mean, and then it's like, what excuse do you have not to set 5 minutes like aside for yourself? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's a catalyst just for doing it. Then you're like, oh wow, that minute flew by. I'll sit for another few, you know. And then if the point is, it makes it really increases your chance of doing it every day.
300 seconds, bro. 300 seconds. That's nothing.
Right, exactly. So then if you've been in the habit of doing this for a month or two at 1 minute, 5 minute meditation or whatever your task may be, or your practice may be, I should say, then it's like, okay, 6 months down the road, won't be so hard to do a half-hour meditation every day because you're already ingraining that groove in your brain of this is something I do every day. You know? So yeah, just want to throw that out there.
There's a lot of good takeaways from this episode. There's a lot of good points I reached in myself, and can't wait to hear anybody's feedback on what they might have experienced. So don't hesitate to reach out at breakthroughconsciousness@gmail.com with anything you might be taking away, points that resonated with you, or even your own ideas and what you feel like would be a helpful step to implement into our days, or just a tactic towards becoming better.
Yeah, just hop in the conversation, say what you like or didn't like, anything you vibe with, anything you would like to clarify or add to the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well, so reach out. Let's do this thing together.
Indeed, until we get out of the loop and into it all again. Peace.